yesterday, just about a year ago. Tomorrow, 14th of August, will be exactly 1 year that UT and Capital Bank went down. Just about 1 year on, we're talking about 5 additional banks going down. What we can say on authority is that with respect to the demand for prosecution, the Economic and Organized Crime Office, EOCO, has officially invited the CEOs and directors and shareholders of these 5 banks that went down. We'll be giving you details of that tonight here on Business Focus. Also, as we get into the discussion, we continue to identify culpability and put it exactly where it lies. What was the role of the auditors of these 5 banks? How come they gave these banks a clean bill of health when there were teething problems in these banks? Stay with us as we seek answers to these questions on Business Focus. My name is Alfred Okanse. We're live on DSTV channel 279 all across the world on 3news.com. It's very interactive. Feel free to join us with your thoughts. Let's go and take a wrap of the business headlines that made news throughout the week. There's more business news on 3news.com. You might want to take some time and go onto that website and get some more news here on TV3. Now, as we always do, let's take a quick reminder of the macroeconomic targets that this government has set for itself for the next quarter of the fiscal year 2018. So you're going to see on your screens right now, as you see the inflation, that's overall GDP growth rate of 6.8%. non-oil GDP growth of 5.4%, and the end period inflation of 8.9%, and average inflation rate of 9.8%. That's at the end of the fiscal year 2018, but also a fiscal deficit of 4.5% of GDP and primary balance surplus of 1.65% of GDP. It's okay. Also, just to give you a reminder that inflation rate as of June 2018 is 10%, and the BOG policy rate that's at July 2018 is 17%. That is just for you to keep it in mind and get a lot more informed there. Now, I've been joined in studio by Chiriboa Kodio-Boakye, who is the Executive Secretary of the Association of Savings and Loans Companies in Ghana. They're giving us details of what's going to be happening in that sector as well. Mr. Boakye, thank you so much for your time. Good evening to you.
Good evening to your viewers.
And great to have you join us this evening. Very shortly, Winslow Sakifio is also going to be joining us. He is the Director of Capital Markets at First Bank, to help us also do this. But as I said early on, we've been discussing exactly what went wrong. How come that 1 year on after UT and Capital Bank collapsed, tomorrow will be exactly 1 year, and 1 year on we're talking about 5 banks going down. EOCO has officially written to the CEOs, directors and shareholders of these 5 banks. From that we understand is exactly what's happened. Now, banking consultant Dr. Richmond Echaine is calling on the central bank to investigate auditors of the 7 collapsed banks, and if found culpable, must be sanctioned. He said the auditors failed to do an extensive testing to warrant giving the banks a true and fair financial position.
An audit is the examination of the financial reports of an organization by someone independent of that organization. The financial reports include the balance sheet, an income statement, a statement of changes in equity, a cash flow statement, and notes. The purpose of the audit is to form a view on whether the information presented in the financial reports are true and fair, and reflects the financial position of the organization at a given date. Following the collapse of the 7 banks, stakeholders have not only pointed fingers to the regulator and the boards of the various banks for the mess, but auditors as well.
What audit work did they do? How did they say that the businesses were going concern when the business was not even, it was a dead concern? If a liquidity support of 620 million has given to somebody, it's one of your tests. You print their statement, Bank of Ghana statement, with any bank statement, and do it. So you will find this money in. And then you begin to find out how were they disbursed.
The auditors of the 7 collapsed banks were PKF for Capital Bank, Deloitte & Touche for Unibank and Royal Bank, J. Mills Lamte & Co. for Construction Bank, EY for UT and Sovereign Bank, and Morrison & Associates for Beige Bank.
If they have audited it and collected their fees and the companies did not survive, or if the IMF has called for asset quality review only to find out that these books have been audited, I think the auditors also have a role to play. This could be contributory negligence, or it could be dereliction of duty. And if they are found with all these things that we are saying, they must also face the full rigors of the law. Nobody should be above the law. Nobody.
Financial analyst Joe Jackson is disappointed at the auditors for failing to detect and flag the irregularities.
What about the auditors who gave these institutions clean bills of health year after year? Where are those auditors? And how can we trust them when they keep saying, when they keep allowing these institutions to run, and yet today we are seeing that there were such massive problems in their institutions? Can we trust any report they give us?
So Joe Jackson, who's head of operations at Delus Finance, financial analyst, ending that particular report that my colleague, Mike Paul Soa, put together there. Winslow Sakifio is joining us in studio as well. He is also a financial analyst, head of capital market at First Bank. Winslow, thank you for joining us. So I'll start with the question. What is the role of the auditor in all of this? And can they escape culpability in everything that's happened? That now we are seeing all the financial infractions that went on, but then year after year, as Joe Jackson was saying, they kept giving these banks a clean bill of health. What is your role? Could they have prevented all of this in their work?
Okay, I think for the auditors, their role is to make sure that the financial statement presented by the companies have the highest quality and there are no errors, whether it's fraudulent or intentional or whatever. And especially when it comes to the banking sector, they are supposed to liaise with the central bank, the regulator. So their role is a bit enhanced when you compare it to auditing in other sectors. And they are supposed to also be in contact with the audit committee of the bank. So for them, it will be difficult to escape because they are right in the mix. And if they had seen issues, they were supposed to have notified Bank of Ghana. But I think, I wouldn't say they were negligent, but I think there were some oversights in their work that was done.
So if they were, as you said, they are right in the middle of the thing, they cannot escape a blame of all this. And they're supposed to be working or liaising with the central bank in their work.
Yes.
So it means that the central bank also clearly has to answer questions when it comes to how come that audit reports that they liaise with the external auditors of these banks looked good and give them a clean bill of health.
You know, if the quality of audit is good, then the quality of supervision also increases. If we have a situation where these banks have been operating, the audits were done, they were given a clean bill, and it turns out that there were issues that were not identified, then we can't only blame the auditors. We have to look at the supervisors from a Bank of Ghana and then the audit committee of the banks. I think from the information we were getting, it looks like there were issues with the board. Governance wasn't the strongest. So definitely the audit committee in the bank wouldn't have been that strong to help the external auditors to do a quality audit.
So what you're saying essentially is that there could be a possibility of cover-ups or collusion
I
not
don't
to put out
have
the right facts as
evidence to that effect. But if we look at the current situation and given the benefit of hindsight, it looked like there were some, I wouldn't call it cover-up, but maybe the work wasn't done satisfactorily, I would say.
Mr. General, let me come to you here on this. You work directly with auditors because you are in the business. Is it the case that you sometimes make it difficult for the auditors to do their work well, external auditors?
Okay, let me put it this way. At the association, the members of the...
As well. So how come that now they would rather than find themselves also part of the whole confusion? Well, any of you can answer. Let me stay with you and then come to Mr. Trinidad.
Okay, we can't say that we won't blame the central bank. They are supposed to regulate, and as you said, they had the powers. But we have a situation where they liaise with the auditors, but it doesn't also relieve them of their duties.
Sure.
So if they had cause to believe that there were things going wrong in the bank, they could have come in to investigate themselves. But I think what we had was they were relying on the auditors. They had internal audits, the accounts were prepared, they were good, and you notice that some of the auditors were big name auditors.
Sure.
And if they do their work, you would want to rely on their work because you know their work was of the required quality.
Absolutely. I mean, because you're talking about, for, as you saw in the report, for Capital Bank, PKF, I mean, world class. Deloitte, and for Unibank and Royal Bank, and then GM Mills, Lamte and Co. for Construction Bank, the auditors, EY for UT and Sovereign Bank, and Morrison and Associate for Beige Bank. These are
yes, and I think, Alfred, we also need to look at
firms that have earned their worth.
Yes,
when it comes to their work,
I think we should also look at the complexity in the transactions that the reports on it. They are not very straightforward. I mean, funds were taken from one institution, channeled through another, goes to a third institution. So it wasn't that simple. And we are looking at a situation where you come in to do a few days audit, and if you are not careful, you wouldn't be able to trace the money to find where it's going to. And even for Bank of Ghana, with all their resources, it took a while for them to even know that the financial aid they gave one of the banks actually came back to them as capital for another bank. So it's a complex maze, and it will be difficult for the auditors to come and sit there 1 or 2 weeks to be able to identify everything. But if the internal audit committee was up to the task, they should have blown the alarm first before the external auditors came in.
So, Mr. Chimbo, in many of the cases, internal auditors, for the lack of better expression, the effectiveness of their work is always threatened by the internal issues that sometimes tends to affect their work. Let's face it. Sometimes you have internal auditors, and I remember the Auditor General saying that, look, internal auditors in public institutions, you just say the truth. I'll cover you. I'll protect you. So it's not the same in the financial sector where you are.
Okay. Who appoints the internal auditor?
The board.
It's not the board.
I mean,
it's management that appointed the internal auditor, but per the requirement and standards, this internal auditor is supposed to have a dual reporting line to management, to board, but first and foremost to the board. But let's ask ourselves as to how well they have been resolved. So we should use this issue happening in the whole financial space as an opportunity for us to go back to where we failed. If you go into the BSDI Act 930, it actually spells out what an external auditor is supposed to do with relation to Bank of Ghana.
Please tell me about
Section says that duties of auditors to the Bank of Ghana. An auditor appointed under the Act shall inform the Bank of Ghana if there is sufficient reason to believe any of the following matters: that the bank or special deposit-taking institution of financial holding is insolvent, or there is a significant risk that the bank or special deposit-taking institution will become insolvent, that material weaknesses exist that threaten the safety and soundness of the bank, that the bank or SDI has contravened a prudential standard, requirement in the law, conditions imposed by license and legislations, and all these things. Say they shall review and report on compliance with anti-money laundering and verify prudential returns and other reports to the bank. The question is, has Bank of Ghana been ensuring that these auditors' reports get to them? And when even it gets to Bank of Ghana, how long does it take for them to even respond to these issues? And so now we are happy that we're cleaning up the whole system, but let's go back to the various infractions of law and then ask ourselves that where did we fall? Then we'll begin to pick up the pieces. Fortunately, I am very confident that these things happening in the whole financial space is going to make the financial space better, going to make it more strengthened and more transparent.
But maybe finally, did we have to pay the price for this? I mean, certainly many believe that this could have been avoided if we were paying attention about 10 years ago.
Yes, it could. And if you want to look at what happened in the global financial crisis, at the end of the day, the blame also came to the auditors. And these were big name auditors. And they have been auditing these institutions for years. And they were giving them
a clean bill of health.
So if we had learned from them, and I think that was how Basel came in with all their changes, and you have to change your auditors after a number of years, because they realized that if you have the same auditor auditing your book, at a point the auditing will become a bit lax. Sure. So we should have learned that, and so far I haven't seen any adverse audit from any of the banks that are in question now. So it means they were giving them a pass every time. So I think what we have to do is strengthen the requirement from the auditors, especially with Bank of Ghana.
Especially with Bank of Ghana, and that's where, as we have been watching over the weeks since this issue came up, we've been identifying which areas institutions and persons need to take up or actually bear culpability or responsibility for everything that's happening. And today we are focusing on the auditors. As my guests here agree that they cannot escape the blame of what's happening now. I'm going to go for this quick break. When I come back, Winslow Sakifio will round it up with the commodities and also the currency market and what's happening, because the Association of Ghana Industries is still concerned about the state of the economy. We'll be back shortly. Do stay. So this is our investor page for today. Invest in yourself first. The best investment you can make is in your own abilities. Anything you can do to develop your own abilities or business is likely to be more productive. And that's a bit of investment tip for you there. Keep that in mind. Now, Winslow Sakifio is still with us, and Chilwako Diabachi is also still with us. But Winslow, let's get into the currency market now. How's the currency looking? I see some reflection of the performance there.
Yes, unfortunately, the CD is still not picking up. I mean, currently, we are looking at a little above 6% of depreciation. We've had it below 3 for most part of this year, but it looks like it's picking up a bit. And it might get worse a little, because from September, that's when businesses will place their orders for the Christmas season.
Absolutely.
So we might have it being affected a bit. But the good news is...
So what's the worst case scenario? So 4.7, 4.8?
If you look at Forex, it's currently doing... I've heard some analysts saying we might get to 5 before close of
5 CDs to $1.
Yes, but I don't think. Maybe 4.9, 4.88. That's where I'll put it. But it's very close to 5. I think 5 has a psychological effect on people. Yes, so because anytime you mention
5 CDs to $1,
yes, then
so
we know we have reached a milestone.
CDs 90 pesos to $1.
And I could see your reaction when I said it could get.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, already, let's face it, it's not getting any better. But let's go on to the stock market now.
Yes, stock market, fortunately for us, is picking up. We had a dip some weeks back, but we are seeing the big banks. I don't know if it has everything to do with the recapitalization, but it looks like they are holding the fort now. And then the manufacturing stocks are also doing good.
So when we're talking about the big banks, what are we talking about? Which banks?
GCB, ETI, EcoBank, and StanChart. So they are now putting up the big numbers. And it looks like their performance was good.
Over the last week on the stock market.
Yes, and we also have Total coming in. Total has had some kind of trouble in the past, but currently things are picking up. So we expect the stock market to rise strongly, but there are still some kind of challenges on the market. Investor sentiment is not that high because of the whole financial situation and all that. So that's basically what we see for the stock market.
Let's go on to commodities now, maybe for oil and gold.
Yes, oil it doesn't look too bad. Currently, we've seen oil dip a bit, even though there are a lot of issues. There's some tension, there's the trade wars that we are expecting. But it looks like oil has been able to keep its form. Currently, there was a slight dip to 72.27, and it's likely we'll see it stabilizing. But the big producers might want to pump some more in, so we'll see the price coming down slightly. But I don't think it would go beyond $70 per barrel
before the end of the year.
Before then,
gentlemen, thank you so much, gentlemen, for making the time to be with us. Winslow Sakifio is the Director of Capital Markets at First Bank, and then also Chunibo Akodia Boachi is the Executive Secretary of the Ghana Association of Savings and Loans Companies. And next week we'll zoom in into that particular sector and tell you what's happening there. But gentlemen, thank you so much for making the time to be with us. Now let's just stay in the banking sector, because the president of the Ghana Association of Bankers, Alhassan Andani, who is also the MD of Stanbic Bank Ghana, has been speaking about the developments in the sector, and he says that look, if you don't have the strength for a commercial universal banking license, settle for the less and strengthen yourself there. Take a listen to this exclusive interview with him that my colleague Etonam Say had.
The president of the Association of Bankers, Ghana Association of Bankers, what was your reaction when you heard of Bank of Ghana's move to merge these 5 banks into the consolidated bank?
Shocked? I was not shocked. We've all, as member banks of the association of Ghana Association of Bankers, in various discussions among ourselves and the central bank, sort of discussed how banks would meet the 400 minimum capital and options, because the banks are at different levels of development. Some are highly developed, over 100 years, some are new banks, and the ability of the shareholders to come up with that money. The new capital was, at various levels of, compliance, and the option of creating an amalgamated banks of Ghana, or was also discussed, and I know some of the banks had already started to engage themselves. So shocked? No, I wasn't shocked. And in terms of discussions, we knew some of the challenges, and therefore, various permutations were being discussed as to how many of them would come together, what specializations would they, so it was one of those options, but it was supposed to be a bank-led option. I mean, the shareholders themselves leading that consolidation rather than the central bank leading the consolidation. But yes, in some of our discussions with the central bank, they said, if by June, July, the owners didn't come out voluntarily with a structure, they may be compelled to do that, because at the end of the day, they have to be interested in the depositors.
Let's talk about meeting the minimum capital requirements of 400 million cedis. The Bank of Ghana has noted that it will support banks that are in good standing, local banks that are in good standing, to meet this requirement. What would be your initial reaction to this announcement?
Well, I think it's about government and a central bank being responsive to concerns and legitimate concerns raised that there's a need to have significant domestic presence. When I say domestic presence, local shareholders driven and led banks that will sort of be part of the financial intermediation. And therefore, most of these banks that we're probably talking about will be significantly local shareholder owned banks who are unable to meet the minimum capital. And in response to the concerns raised about retaining domestic participation in the banking sector, that intervention is legitimate, and they would expect that after some time, when these banks have gained roots and properly managed and making profit, they would pay back, or the government will put those shares back onto the stock exchange for the generality of Ghanaians to participate in and own that kind of bank. So yes, it's part of the economic development, longer term economic development kind of strategy.
There are concerns that the Bank of Ghana is bending its own rules. You've set 400 million cedis. And the main reason we heard from the Bank of Ghana is to ensure we have a robust banking sector. You increase it from 120 to 400 million. If you knew the banks, the local banks will not be able to pay, why increase it in the first place?
In this particular case, it's just about the shortage of capital. The owners and probably the market not ready at the, in the current state of those banks to be able to put in the fresh equity. And that's why maybe government and the central bank, again, in response to the legitimate concern about domestic participation in the financial services industry, have agreed to go that step. But the real thing is about enforcing, whether it's at the central bank, the shareholders and or government, and ensuring that people who are put in charge of these organizations run them very well, so that everybody will be the better for it.
Fantastic. So for those of you who probably wonder what Helen does, you see this box on here. She's going to walk us through what she really does and what the business is all about. Helen, what is Vani's Collections? Really?
Well, Vani's Collections is a fashion, would say, company. We do everything in African prints, promote African prints. We just want to give a touch of African print in any kind of dressing that we have around. So if it's a corporate dressing, if it's a casual dressing, everything, we want to give something out that will give you a touch of Africanness in your dressing. So that's basically what we do at Vani's Collections.
I see.
Yes.
And how long has it been in existence?
Vani's Collections itself came about like 3 months ago. Yes, it's just friends and families just pressuring me.
So what we see on your screens, or on your screens right now, some of the things you do.
Yes. So we're thinking the corporate guys, how can they give a touch of Africanness to their dressing? And we were like, let's go in for some ties and see if we have web capes. We have even for the babies. Bibs and boots, just for them to know they are African babies.
African babies?
Yes.
So you don't have to go and buy all of those things.
No.
How has it been for you for the past 3 months? In fact, how did all of this start? Because from what we know, you are a teacher by profession.
Yes. So I teach during the day and I sew during the evening or night, and then during weekends. So some guys just walked to me with some pictures and asked me if I could work something out, like ties. I don't know where they got it from. So I gave them like a couple of days to work out something. I came out with a couple of other ideas other than what they brought to me, like the pin that we added to it, and they loved it. So everybody was like, "Oh, this is great. Just do it, and let's send it out there." So gradually we improved it.
So what you see on your screen is a visit to Helen's workshop.
Yes.
That's
my home.
You doing your sewing. I see. And so you do this when you're back from school?
Yes.
Do you have a specific place you do this, or you do this in your house?
I do it at home, so I'm able to work till 1 a.m.
I see.
Yes.
And how many people help you do this?
Family. My mom and my sister, basically, they are always helping me.
I see. Interesting. So what are some of the challenges that you face? Rather a short period you've been in business, but I see that you're all over the place. I mean, positively.
Yes.
But how long has, what are some of the challenges that you face?
Well, funding, I would say. I had to fund everything via my salary, and then from friends and family. And then some of the stuff come for free, like the photography, like promotion on social media and other things, like sending them to you guys. Okay. Your help in promoting them. So the funding aspect is quite difficult, and then getting the market for it. People were like, "How about you even buy the fabric?" Then I'll ask you, "Do you know the work that goes into making just one set of?" So appreciate the work by paying the the price that.
I mean, yes, the ties that are imported, buy some for 200 CDs,
sure,
150 CDs, depending on where you buy, if you appreciate quality.
Yes.
So if this is going for, so this is the tie. It comes with the pin
and then the square.
And then the pocket square as well.
Square.
Interesting. So
yes.
one of the days you probably
all made in African print.
And our colleague Brighton Anamfo is one lover of.
Yes, so I sent him a couple of them, and he's really loving them.
And Issa Money as well. They love this.
They love the ties.
And it's not only ties. I'm told.
Yes.
You have bow ties.
Bow ties, well. Yes. The brooches.
These days, those who wear bow ties are a victim of something. But I think these bow ties will bring something good.
Sure.
Great stuff.
Sure.
So this is African bow ties in there.
Yes.
So if someone is watching, and because this particular administration is very heavy on promoting the Ghanaianness of everything, what kind of help would you need to touch more lives, employ more people, to expand your business?
Yes, as I said earlier, I work from home, so my machines and everything are at home. I don't have a place that I would say I'll call my own or my own workplace. So if I get the help of getting a place, since I'm a teacher too, I'll be able to help my girls especially who come out from school and they are just walking about the place and end up in different kind of problems.
Absolutely.
Sure. So I can train them and help them to acquire some skills, at least maybe before they get to the secondary school, between when they finish junior high and then get into the secondary school. It's been on my heart just to train them to acquire something.
And not get pregnant when they are waiting.
Sure.
Thank you. Helen Vanderpoel, we celebrate you today as our mover for today. Thank you so much. And keep touching lives and keep making us look good. We're indeed very grateful. And she's a mover for today with Vanny's Collections. Helen Vanderpoel, she's on Facebook.
Yes, Facebook, Vanny's Collections, Instagram, Vanny's Collections, GH.
Thank you so much. On behalf of the rest of the team, we're grateful. Stay with us. We're getting to News 360. My name is Alfred Okanse. Good evening.